Hello and welcome back to America Can We Talk into today's First Five. I'm doing a very special show on this Thanksgiving week. 3 weeks from today, the Constitution requires that the Electoral College vote on who won the presidency in this most recent election, November 2020. If they cannot get to a conclusion, cannot get to 270 electors choosing either President Trump or Joe Biden, then we're off to the races with what the Constitution provides. You've been through those steps on this show. What I want to focus on now is this. There is clamoring in America for the idea that we've got to get to the answer. We have to hurry up. We don't have time. And I want to say this. What matters the most is we get the right answer. We get the correct answer. We get the truth about what happened in the 2020 election cycle. We have people naturally on the Biden team pushing the argument that everyone knows, MSNBC called it, CNN called it, everybody's called it. Obviously, Joe Biden won, and this is just sour grapes on the part of President Trump, unwilling yet to concede. Nothing could be further from the truth. Today, in just a moment, we're going to have Russ Ramsland joining us. We're going to be talking about, and it gets down into the weeds, but it's the only way to help you try to understand how consequential this is. Get down into the weeds a bit to understand what evidence is there that there was actually electronic manipulation of voter tabulation software, or in plain English, was there vote switching? Is there evidence? Is our system vulnerable so that you could have vote switching? And if it is vulnerable, what, if anything, is the proof that actually happened this time? Everyone telling you that we just need to pressure President Trump to concede, let Joe Biden have it. What they're telling you is they don't really care about the truth. We have time to get to the truth, and that's what we're going to do. I want to, though, before we dive into this in-depth conversation with Russ Ramsland, just remind you of a few top-line issues, top-line observations, common sense observations that can help many, or the reason many Americans simply do not believe that the election outcome was what CNN and all the liberal media are trying to claim it to be. Several quick things. I could go through many of them. I want to hit just a few top-line ones. Number one, there are, in this country, they use the expression bellwether counties, counties that simply have correctly chosen the winning candidate in the presidential race pretty much ever since Reagan's time, meaning whatever reason, the county is composed of people who reflect the heartland of the majority of America. Of those 19 counties that have correctly chosen the president in the last all elections since President Reagan, there are 19 of them. 18 of them went for President Trump by an average of 12 points. One went for Biden by 3 points. This is just common sense reason to question the allegation or the claim that Biden clearly won the majority and will win the Electoral College. Number two, Cook Political Report, which does all sorts of analyzing ahead of elections. They talk about, well, we have this many races, and they'll sometimes switch and say this was a solid Democrat, now it's leaning Democrat, now it's middle. So what they had the day before we got to the election, they had 27 House races, U.S. House races ranked as toss-ups. Couldn't figure out through all their polling who was going to win. All 27 went Republican. They also had 26 races ranked as leaning GOP, 26 House races, all won by the Republican candidate. They also had 36 leaning Democrat, and 7 of those were won by the Republican. Republicans did not lose one single incumbent Republican House race. This data does not square with what the left and what the media are trying to argue, that President Trump lost and that Biden won the presidency. One more quick point about this election cycle. These are data-driven observations, data-driven facts. But the other thing to draw from, the other point to draw from it is this. When the American people returned every single incumbent GOP House member back to the House, back to the U.S. Congress, when the Democrats did not take over the Senate, or we don't know the final outcome yet, but so far they haven't taken over the Senate as they predicted they would, what you're really hearing is a message to the American people that they actually don't like the Marxist direction of the American left. They're rejecting the mission and the message of defund the police, riot in the cities, the whole Marxist agenda of the left became more and more apparent to the American people in this last year, and the American people turned it down. They said no thank you. The American people, common sense tells you, did not make all those voting decisions, but somehow say, but we elect Biden. These are common sense arguments that many Americans, and just of course the size of the rallies, President Trump on 24 hours notice can get a rally of 60,000 people and more people who couldn't get in, and Vice President Biden couldn't fill a gym with people who actually want to come and listen to him and cheer him on. That isn't necessarily a fact that proves the outcome of the voting. They are, though, extremely compelling pieces of evidence that make it very unlikely that Biden somehow defeated President Trump in the general election, in the overall numbers and the Electoral College. There are mounds and mounds of evidence growing in the swing states we're all focusing on now related to all sorts of vote fraud, election fraud, ballots being run through the machines. We've been through all of that evidence. But what I want to focus on for most of the rest of the show is this. The American people want to believe that we have a system that involves the use of electronic voting machines, and that it's reliable, that it is impregnable. No one could get in and change votes. That's what we want to believe. We think of votes like objects, like if we had a basket and you put in, 12 green apples and 14 red apples, and they're sitting there in the basket, and you leave the room and nobody else is there, and you come back and you're going to have 12 green apples and 14 red apples. That's what we think our voting system is like. It's votes, early votes, kept in some, cavernous place, securely protected and invulnerable. And what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show today is how could our system be as vulnerable as the advocates for a close relooking at the election data, a close examination of the Dominion voting systems, a close examination of the elections in the swing states, because at the end of the day, America deserves the truth. And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five.